too sensitive, too emotional, too much. That label followed you for years, quietly shaping how you saw yourself, slowly convincing you that your depth was a flaw instead of a force. But there is a truth most people never talk about, a truth that only reveals itself with time, pressure, and experience. And that truth is this: the empath personality does not stay weak. It evolves, it sharpens, and later in life it becomes something unexpectedly powerful, something most people cannot compete with or even fully understand. What once felt like a burden begins to turn into awareness. What once drained you starts to guide you, and what once made you feel lost begins to make everything clear, almost too clear. And that shift does not happen overnight. It builds quietly in the background of your life while others are distracted, while others are still playing surface-level games. And by the time it fully forms, the empath is no longer easy to read, no longer easy to use, no longer easy to break. There is a hidden transformation that takes place, one that most people overlook because it does not look loud or aggressive. It looks calm, controlled, and deeply aware, and that is exactly why it becomes dangerous in the best possible way. This video will uncover why empaths struggle early, why they absorb more than others, why they often feel behind or misunderstood, and most importantly, why all of that pain is not wasted but actually building something rare, something that only shows its true value later in life. You will understand how emotional sensitivity slowly turns into emotional intelligence, how constant overthinking turns into sharp perception, and how years of being overwhelmed create a level of self-control that most people never develop. There are lesser-known patterns in the empath journey that almost no one explains, patterns that reveal why many empaths suddenly change, suddenly pull back, suddenly become selective with their energy, and suddenly stop explaining themselves. And when that happens, people around them start noticing a difference but cannot fully explain it because what changed is internal, quiet, and powerful. There is also a reason why empaths often attract certain types of people in their early years, and why that pattern breaks later, and once it breaks, it rarely returns because awareness replaces confusion, and clarity replaces emotional chaos. This is not just about personality, this is about transformation. This is about growth that is built through experience, through mistakes, through emotional overload, and through moments where everything felt like too much, and yet those moments were shaping something strong beneath the surface. Most people never reach that level because they avoid discomfort, but empaths do not have that option. They feel everything, they process everything, and over time that processing becomes power. By the end of this video, you will see your journey differently. You will understand why certain things happen the way they did, and you will start to recognize the strength that has been forming within you all along, even during the moments when you felt the weakest. Stay with this till the end because the final realization changes how you see yourself and how you move in the world. It connects everything, the pain, the growth, the silence, and the shift into one clear understanding that most people never reach. Welcome to the channel, where depth is not ignored but explored, where hidden truths are brought to light, and where you begin to understand yourself on a level that most never do. If this message resonates even slightly, make sure to subscribe, because what you are about to learn next will only go deeper. The early part of this journey feels heavy in a way that is hard to explain to anyone who does not feel things as deeply, because it is not just about emotions. It is about carrying more than your own. It is about walking into a room and sensing tension without a word being spoken. It is about noticing small changes in tone, small shifts in energy, small signs that others ignore, and all of that builds up quietly inside you until it becomes overwhelming, not in a dramatic way, but in a constant, exhausting way that never fully switches off. And because of that, it becomes easy for others to lean on you without realizing how much weight you are already holding. It becomes easy for them to take more than they give, to expect your understanding, your patience, your kindness, while giving very little in return. And for a long time, it feels normal. It feels like this is just how life works. Like your role is to support, to listen, to absorb, to adjust, and slowly, without even noticing it, you start to lose your own space in the process. Your own voice becomes quieter, your own needs become less important, and saying no feels wrong, almost like a betrayal of who you are. So you keep saying yes, even when it drains you, even when it leaves you empty, even when you know deep down that it is costing you more than it should. And that creates a quiet conflict inside, because on one side there is your natural desire to care, to help, to understand. And on the other side, there is a growing sense of exhaustion, a feeling that something is not right, a feeling that you are giving too much and receiving too little, but you push that feeling aside because it is easier to continue than to confront it, easier to stay the same than to risk change. And during this time, there is also a strong sense of being different, not in a way that feels special, but in a way that feels isolating, like you see things others do not see, like you feel things others do not feel. And when you try to express it, it often gets misunderstood or dismissed, which makes you pull back even more. It makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder if maybe you are too much, too sensitive, too aware, and that doubt becomes part of your identity for a while, shaping how you interact with the world, shaping how you see yourself. But all of this, every moment of confusion, every time you felt overwhelmed, every time you gave more than you should have, every time you stayed silent instead of speaking up, it is not wasted. It is building something, even if you cannot see it yet, because slowly, over time, something begins to shift. Not suddenly, not loudly, but quietly and consistently, the same way everything else has been happening. And that shift often begins with a moment of realization, a moment where the exhaustion becomes too strong to ignore, where the patterns become too clear to deny, where you start to notice that the same situations keep repeating, the same types of people keep appearing, the same outcomes keep happening. And that is when awareness starts to grow, not as a choice, but as a response. Because the pain forces you to look deeper. It forces you to ask questions you avoided before. It forces you to see things as they are instead of how you hoped they would be. And with that awareness comes a new ability. The ability to recognize patterns in people, to see beyond words, to understand intentions without needing explanations. And at first, this can feel uncomfortable because it changes how you interact with others. It makes things clearer but also more complicated because now you cannot ignore what you see, you cannot pretend not to notice, and at the same time, the emotional exhaustion that once drained you begins to push you towards something new, something that may feel unfamiliar at first. And that is boundaries, not harsh or cold boundaries, but necessary ones. Boundaries that protect your energy, boundaries that create space for you to exist without being overwhelmed. And even though setting them may feel difficult in the beginning, even though it may come with guilt or doubt, it becomes easier with time because you start to understand why they matter. You start to see the difference they make, and this is where everything begins to change in a deeper way because at some point, feeling everything stops being a gift and starts becoming a lesson. A lesson about balance, about awareness, about knowing when to give and when to step back. And as that lesson becomes clearer, something else starts to emerge, something that was always there but never fully developed. And that is the hidden strength within empathy itself, because what once felt like a weakness begins to reveal its true nature. It begins to show that it is not just about feeling more, it is about understanding more, it is about seeing connections that others miss, it is about recognizing emotions before they are expressed. And that creates a level of emotional intelligence that is rare, a level of awareness that cannot be easily taught, and with that comes the ability to read people almost instantly, not in a judgmental way, but in a clear and grounded way, where you can sense authenticity, where you can detect inconsistency, where you can understand what is being said and what is being hidden at the same time. And this ability becomes stronger as you continue to grow, as you continue to learn from your experiences, as you continue to reflect on your own thoughts and emotions. Because self-reflection becomes a natural part of who you are. It becomes a tool that helps you understand yourself better, that helps you process what you feel instead of being controlled by it. And over time, your intuition also becomes sharper, more reliable, more grounded in experience, and you start to trust it in a way you did not before. You start to listen to it instead of questioning it. And this is where the shift becomes more visible, not just internally, but externally as well, because your actions begin to change, your choices begin to change. And this marks the beginning of what can be called an awakening phase, a stage where you are no longer operating in the same way as before, where you are no longer driven by the need to please or to be accepted, where you are no longer giving without thinking, because now you understand the cost of that. Now you understand the importance of balance. And because of that, you start to become more selective with your energy, not in a selfish way, but in a conscious way, where you choose where to invest your time, your attention, your care, and where you choose to step back. And this selectiveness changes everything. It changes the people you allow into your life. It changes the situations you engage in. It changes the way you respond to others. And one of the most significant changes is the ability to set boundaries without guilt, to say no without over-explaining, to protect your space without feeling like you are doing something wrong. And at the same time, there is also a growing ability to detach from toxic environments and relationships, not out of anger, not out of resentment, but out of clarity, because you see what is not healthy. You understand what is not right for you, and you choose to step away. And this does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you lose your empathy. It simply means you redirect it. You focus it where it is valued, where it is respected, where it is mutual. Because you do not stop caring, you just stop caring about the wrong people. And this realization brings a sense of calm, a sense of control that was missing before, because now your emotions are not controlling you in the same way. Now there is a balance between feeling and understanding, between reacting and observing. And this is where the true power begins to show, because emotional control replaces emotional overwhelm. Clarity replaces confusion. Confidence replaces self-doubt. And you become someone who is calm, observant, and difficult to manipulate. Not because you are closed off, but because you are aware, because you understand, because you see things for what they are. And that awareness acts as a shield, protecting you from the patterns that once affected you, protecting you from the situations that once drained you. And at the same time, it also acts as a guide, helping you navigate life with a level of insight that most people never develop. And this transformation is not loud. It is not something that needs to be announced. It is something that is felt in your presence, something that is noticed in the way you respond, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you choose your words, and when you look back at who you were before, when you remember the version of yourself that felt overwhelmed, that felt unsure, that felt lost, you begin to see the difference clearly. You begin to understand how far you have come. And it becomes clear that you did not become cold, you did not lose your ability to care, you became aware, you became grounded, you became someone who understands their own value. And once that understanding is in place, it does not fade, it does not disappear, it becomes part of who you are, guiding your decisions, shaping your actions, and ensuring that you never lose yourself in the same way again. Because once an empath learns their worth, once they fully understand what they bring and what they deserve, they do not return to the version of themselves that accepted less. They do not return to the patterns that caused them pain. They move forward with clarity, with strength, with a quiet confidence that does not need validation. And that is where the true power lies, not in being loud or dominant, but in being aware, in being in control, in being able to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, to understand others without losing yourself, to care without sacrificing your own well-being. And that balance, that control, that awareness, it continues to grow. It continues to shape your life in ways that go beyond what you once believed was possible, creating a path that is not defined by weakness, but by strength that was built over time, strength that was earned through experience, strength that remains steady even when everything else changes. And that is the quiet transformation that turns an empath into someone truly powerful. And somewhere along this journey, something important becomes clear. Nothing about you was ever too much. It was simply too real for the wrong people to understand. And now that you see it, now that you feel the difference within yourself, you start moving in a quieter but stronger way, a way that does not chase approval, a way that does not explain your worth, because it already knows it. And that shift changes everything, the way you connect, the way you respond, the way you protect your peace. And even though the world may look the same, your place in it feels completely different, more grounded, more certain, more in control. And that is something most people spend their whole lives trying to find. If this spoke to something inside you, if even a small part of this felt like your story, then stay connected, because this is only the beginning of understanding what you truly are becoming. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. Like this video so it reaches others who are still trying to make sense of their journey, and share it with someone who needs to hear this but has never had the words for it. Because sometimes one message at the right time can change how everything is seen, and once that shift happens, there is no going back.